Video games are a great pastime and a hobby. Especially in these trying times, they can make sure that we aren't going crazy in isolation. Even though it's getting kinda close to that. But there is something that has been plaguing gaming for a long time now, and you have already read the title. It's microtransactions.
I'm on a plane. I can't complain. I'm on a plane. I can't complain.
There have been games coming out one after another, good and bad, with more greedy microtransaction systems as the time goes on, but I feel like some of them are more tolerable than others. So whenever I use the word microtransaction, I mean additional things to games that can be purchased with real money, and that includes stuff like loot boxes, or should I call them surprise mechanics.
Do you consider loot boxes to be an ethical feature of your games?
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
Yeah, thanks EA. Skins, map packs, story expansions, and pretty much any type of paid DLC. I'm not sure if all of those fall under the category of microtransaction, because I feel like some of them are closer to macrotransactions, but I'll be using the term microtransaction for the sake of simplicity. Now, on paper, that doesn't sound that bad. You get more content while supporting the developers of the game. But there are some teeny weeny problems, because some of these companies are greedy assholes that love money as much as Joe Biden loves kids jumping on his lap.
So I learned about roaches, I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Yeah, that guy isn't okay. He's definitely going senile. Microtransactions, just like your uncles, can be separated into non-predatory and predatory. Non-predatory microtransactions are the ones that won't fuck up the balance of the game, and they are fairly priced. This would include stuff like cosmetic only ones. But the predatory ones, on the other hand, screw with the balance of the game, like pay to win mechanics, and stuff that encourages gambling, like loot boxes. Even though sometimes the lines between the two can be kinda blurry, but I will get to that a little bit later, so hold on to your butt cheeks. So microtransactions are quite hated in the gaming community, and rightfully so, but still they sell a shit ton, and I mean a heaping pile of bullshit amount every year. And if they are so hated, then why do they sell so much? Shouldn't this trend have died a long time ago? And trust me, we wish that would have been the case, but I feel like there are two options why they still hang around like flies around a decaying corpse. The first one being that we who oppose microtransactions are just a vocal minority, or the second option and the more likely one being that whales are to blame. And I'm not talking about the biggest mammal on the planet, and no, I'm not talking about fat people on the beach. I'm talking about people who actively support microtransactions, enabling these greedy companies to continue their shady practices. And I'm not telling you how to use your money. Fuck it, you could buy a dump truck full of hookers and have a
cock and ball torture
filled orgy. And I'm not telling you to stop buying microtransactions, I'm just suggesting that you're a little bit more careful with your money and avoid shady practices like the plague. It definitely depends on a person how they view microtransactions. Do they hate them with every fiber of their being? Do they support only certain types of systems? Or do they actually like spending money on them and purposefully supporting bullshit practices that are slowly eating gaming alive? I feel like the last people might have severe brain damage from all the glue they've been huffing, but I'm not sure. Now, how do I feel about microtransactions, because you obviously care about that? Well, in an ideal world, I wouldn't wanna see almost any of them. Certain things that I would be fine with at maximum would be stuff like Witcher 3 story expansions, Halo and COD's map packs, and overall stuff that actually adds something to the game that is worth your while. Even though fondly enough that multiplayer content packs are pretty much dying out because of stuff like battle passes and games as a service systems, and that is kind of a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, but I feel like those two things deserve their own video at some point. But in the current microtransaction climate, I'd only like to see cosmetic ones that are well priced, and mainly in free-to-play games, because I think that it's fine to support developers, and microtransactions are pretty much the only way to do that if a free-to-play game is in question. And even though I wouldn't wanna see even cosmetic only ones in games that I've already paid around 60 euros for, I have to admit that the cosmetic ones are the lesser evil, so I let them pass this time. And a thing that I don't specifically like about cosmetic-only microtransactions is the fact that it takes out of the experience. If I know that I can't unlock everything by just playing the game, and it makes me feel like I'm missing something, and I'm not a completionist, so most likely I wouldn't unlock everything if I could, but just the idea of hiding something behind a paywall that you could easily unlock in a game is frustrating. Also, these greedy money-hungry companies that are looking at your wallet like it's a fine piece of ass meat are also to blame for these bullshit microtransactions. And I'm mainly talking about publishers here, because most of the time it seems like the actual dev team behind these games are pressured by these greedy publishers to add these microtransactions in there to make more money. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes it is the dev team who decides, you know what, let's rip some people off. And before I start going full Reddit mode with Activision, I have never been the boycotting type. I've bought EA and Activision games, but I haven't supported their bullshit practices at least for a long time now. Because I've gotten smarter over the years, and after all I'm a 50-year-old man, and I'm saying this mainly because I know that I could sound a little bit hypocritical if I started shitting on some of these companies while buying some of their products. And if that makes my opinion less valid, then so be it. Now, it isn't a secret that EA and Activision are most likely the greediest game companies currently, and that their practices are frowned upon. It feels like game after game, these companies try to milk as much money out of you as they can, but luckily people are starting to notice that. Even one of EA's microtransaction controversies made serious headlines and turned the public's eye towards these practices, and that being the Battlefront 2 lootbox fiasco. And if you have the memory span of a goldfish and can't remember what happened, well, long story short, EA had a universe-expanding brain fart of an idea to let people purchase in-game currency with real money. And with that in-game currency you could buy loot boxes, and from those loot boxes you could get things that could actually impact gameplay. And also you could unlock certain heroes in the game faster by buying loot boxes to get more credits instead of grinding 40 plus hours without putting any more money into the game. And as you could guess, people weren't that happy about it. DICE did actually fix the game by removing microtransactions, and even though the game still has loot boxes, you can't buy anything with real money. And you don't have to grind for the characters that you want anymore. And currently, it's a fucking great game. But sadly, you'd need to Marty McFly touch it and erase it from the past. Because it is still a stain in the game's legacy. Now, Activision on the other hand has recently had some other controversies that might have, well, definitely had something to do with money, and that isn't the subject of this video, but that controversy shows that Activision and Blizzard are quite greedy as well. Let's use Black Ops 4 as an example. Firstly, they just waited for the reviews and good press to drop in, and then they added microtransactions. There is a €50 season pass, loot boxes that you can earn or buy. Inside of those loot boxes there are guns and cosmetic things, and then there is the battle pass that you can either grind your ass out with or buy directly. And oh yeah, you had to buy the game with €60. That's a normal amount to pay for a AAA game, but it's a completely different deal if the game has similar systems to a fucking free-to-play mobile game. Also, apparently Activision made around
$3.3 billion
last year from microtransactions alone. That is a shit ton of money. And if we backtrack a little bit, a lot of other games do similar things to what Black Ops 4 does with microtransactions, but most of the time the games themselves are cheaper or outright free, and the microtransactions might be cheaper as well. Now, this doesn't excuse predatory or shady practices in those games, but they are just way more acceptable than what Activision is doing here. Newest card game published by Activision on the other hand is a step in the right direction, and I'm of course talking about Modern Warfare. And I'm talking about the reboot, not the original or the remaster, because they fucking shoved loot boxes into that as well. The reboot has microtransactions, those being a battle pass that also has some free tiers, characters, and blueprints for weapons that are pretty much just variant types that won't affect gameplay, but these things are clumped up into bundles, which means that you can't buy anything separately, you need to get them in a bundle, so there's that. And even though I wouldn't wanna see any of those in the game, like I said earlier, it's the lesser evil, and this is a small step in the right direction, so baby steps I guess. Bethesda has also shown their greedy goblin face with Fallout 76. Yeah, the microtransactions definitely aren't the only problem that the game has, but this video isn't about how bad Fallout 76 is, it's about microtransactions obviously. But I feel like the fact that the game is bad has an effect that makes the microtransactions even worse, because if you're selling a shite product, don't try to monetize it even more, fix it and then think about additional monetization tactics. At least that would make a lot more sense. Fallout 76's microtransactions are tied to the atoms, that is an in-game currency that you can get by doing challenges and by buying them with real money. And you can use these items to buy stuff from the in-game store, and most of the items in the store are cosmetic only. But apparently there are items like the repair kits that have an effect on the game, and then there's the whole Fallout First subscription that pretty much locks some game improvements behind a paywall. And oh yeah, it's $100 a year, like the game wasn't enough of a money waster. At least Bethesda unintentionally started a class war in the game, so we got some entertainment out of it. But all of this is coming from a company that released the same game 7 times, so you know there is a dead dog buried here somewhere. Now, what do I mean by blurring the line between predatory and non-predatory systems? So you remember how earlier I said that microtransactions can be separated into predatory and non-predatory systems? Well, sometimes non-predatory microtransactions, like cheap cosmetic only ones, can be extremely greedy. For example, Dead or Alive 6, the weeb fighting game, added microtransactions where if you wanna change your hair color, you have to pay $1. Now that doesn't sound that awful, because it's quite cheap, but the problem lies in the fact that you aren't paying for an unlock, you are paying for the change. So if you wanna change your hair color back, you have to pay that $1 again, and that's the thing, it's cheap, it's cosmetic only, but it's charging you for something as simple as changing your hair color. That's moneybags levels of greed. Another example would be that at one point, Apex Legends, a free-to-play game, pretty much had a cosmetic-only melee weapon that would have costed around $170, and that's fucking absurd. Respawn did come out, apologized and fixed it, but still, what made them think that it's fine to pay around $170 for a virtual action game? I mean, CSGO has a pretty vast skin economy and some of those skins go for tens of thousands of dollars, but that's the thing, these skins actually have real world value. And if we stay in the subject of CSGO for a little bit, its lootbox system is closer to gambling than other games because instead of getting just pixels, you get pixels that have actual monetary value. Now is that for better or for worse? On the other hand, you might get your money back while opening cases, but as a person who has opened their fair share amount of cases, it can also encourage you to put more money into them in the hopes of getting that sweet knife drop that I actually got at one point, and then I traded it for cheaper skins, so I lost money. Yeah, I was a fucking smooth brain moron. Another example for blurring the lines would be Gears of War 5. It has a Fortnite-like store where you can just buy stuff directly with the game's premium iron currency that you can buy in fixed amounts, so no bullshit RNG loot boxes. But the things are timed so they gotta pressure you to spend your money at that moment, and also they had the audacity to try and lock stuff that was already accessible in the older games behind a paywall, like the curb stomp execution. But they did back down on that, and you can certainly unlock stuff for free, but apparently it's extremely grindy and lackluster. Also, it is kind of funny that the new Gears Tactics game doesn't have microtransactions and they use it as a selling point in their launch trailer. Coalition, do you want microtransactions or not? And it is kinda sad that these companies need to even use it as a selling point. Like, hey, buy our game because it isn't meant to milk your wallet dry! How about we jump from a Microsoft flagship title to another, that being Halo. You might not know this about me, but I'm a huge Halo fan. It's my favorite game series and it's quite frustrating to see it slowly but surely getting molested by microtransactions. Just ask any Halo fan. And Halo 5 is kinda the game that fucked the series when it comes to microtransactions, because before that the only additional things that you could buy for Halo games was map packs. Halo 5 has rec packs that are pretty much just loot boxes that you can earn by playing the game, or you can just straight up buy them with real money, or with rec points that you also get by playing the game. The rec packs have cosmetic things like armor for your character, weapon skins and nameplates, but they also have stuff that is tied to the gameplay, like XP and reg point boosters, and stuff that is tied to the Warzone game mode of the game. So, in Warzone, wait a minute, that's the wrong game. Let me fix it, just wait a second. There we go. Now this is the Warzone that I'm talking about. In Warzone you increase your reg level that you use to buy vehicles, boosters and weapons that you get from reg packs. So already the combination of real money and stuff that has an effect on gameplay isn't promising. But that isn't all that reg packs fucked up. No, before Halo 5, more notably Halo 3, Reach and 4, the customization of your Spartan was a lot more in depth. But in Halo 5 you can only choose your helmet and the rest of your body plus the coloration of it. And the fact that Halo 5 has way too many armor sets, and some of those sets are just copies of other sets with different patterns, doesn't help at all. So Halo 5 completely butchered Halo's customization. 343 also decided that it would be great to milk some more money out of people's nostalgia with the classic helmets reg pack that would give you some of the old helmets from the other Halo games, and every once in a while you can buy it with reg points, but most of the time you have to spend money to get it. There is a Halopedia page about the different reg packs that you can get in Halo 5. Most of them you can get by just playing the game or by buying them with reg points. There are only like a couple of them that you have to buy with real money, so I'll leave a link to that in the description if you wanna go and check it out. Maybe I'm just a negative prick. Who am I kidding? Of course I am. But Halo's future with microtransactions doesn't look that bright either, because it has been confirmed for a long time now that Halo Infinite will have microtransactions, but not loot boxes. And normally that should be reassuring news, but as we demonstrated with Gears 5 earlier, just because the microtransactions are cosmetic only, or they don't include loot boxes, doesn't mean that it's a good thing. And while I am worried about microtransactions in Halo Infinite because they have a chance to ruin the game, the fact that 343 has been as quiet about the game as me in a social situation because I'm afraid of people has me worried. Like the game should come out at the end of this year. Unless it has been delayed like a lot of other games. And at this point I kinda hope that it is delayed, because we haven't even started a proper marketing cycle for it yet. Sorry I went on a little tangent there, let's wrap this video up. So in conclusion, microtransactions are a modern gaming problem, and it seems that they are, unfortunately, here to stay for a long time. But maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel, because there are people who see past some of the bullshit, and are trying to pass bills that ban loot boxes. And even though we went over how loot boxes aren't always the worst kinds of microtransactions, it is still a step in the right direction. Now, do I think that microtransactions should be banned outright? Not entirely, and here's why. Even though there are greedy companies that try to milk money out of you like some big juicy tit, there are ones that are fair, that are more consumer friendly. Yeah, I know, microtransactions and consumer friendly in the same sentence, never would have guessed. And like I said earlier, cosmetic only microtransactions, when done right, are a great way to support developers of free-to-play games. And some companies also claim that microtransactions are there to support future content, but this is mostly with games that use the games as a service tactic, and I don't really know how true the claim is, because some of these companies make a shit ton of money even without microtransactions, so I don't know if they're trying to pull our metaphorical dicks or not. But I would like to see maybe some sort of legislations that would prevent these companies from applying predatory consumer tactics, but I guess that's just me. And even though microtransactions are a problem in the current gaming environment, that doesn't stop great games from coming out that don't have microtransactions. And here are a few: Doom Eternal, Animal Crossing, and Resident Evil 3 Remake, and a boatload of other games that have come out as well. But I have also found myself enjoying games that have microtransactions, oddly enough. Because in those games they just feel pointless to me, and they don't really affect my enjoyment of it. For example, I mentioned the new Modern Warfare game. The microtransactions in it don't matter to me, and the same could be said about Deus Ex Mankind Divided. I never felt like the game was forcing me to buy them. That doesn't justify them being there, but it is just easier to forget about them. I do wish that microtransactions would be toned down. Nowadays, instead of them being a great way to make more money while giving the players extra content that is worth it, some of these companies try to feed us with lackluster or balance-breaking content and making a lot of money out of it, while we, the consumers, are getting shafted in the end. And of course, you could just not buy them, but that doesn't exactly stop other people from buying them and encouraging these type of monetization tactics, but at the end of the day, these are companies who make microtransactions, and the whole point of companies is to make money, so we can just hope that somehow they become more consumer friendly. But I doubt it. For now, we just have to enjoy the other game options out there, and thankfully there isn't a shortage of them. So yeah, microtransactions can go fuck themselves. So that was the video, and surprisingly enough, it took a long ass time to make. I started writing the script before like last Christmas, so I apologize for that it took so long to make. But also I feel like I wanted to add to the ending a little bit. I don't know the ins and outs of microtransactions because I don't work in the gaming business. Things definitely aren't as black and white as they seem. I just don't like them. That's why I decided to make this video. So I feel like I definitely got some things wrong about microtransactions, but still, I don't like them, and that's the whole origin of this video. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, and if you did, leave a like, subscribe, and see you guys in the next video.